Elliot sat across from Madeline, the words she had just spoken hanging between them like a heavy cloud. She never stopped loving you, and neither did I. The truth in her voice shook him to his core, but he didn't know how to respond. His heart raced, his mind spinning with emotions he thought were buried long ago. The silence stretched on, longer than either of them had expected. Madeline's gaze never wavered, but there was something more in her eyes now. Something raw, something vulnerable. It was the same look he had seen in her eyes years ago, just before everything fell apart. "Why now, Madeline?" Elliot finally asked, his voice hoarse. "Why tell me this after all this time?" She looked down at her hands, her fingers picking at the edge of the tablecloth. "Because I can't keep pretending that everything is fine," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I thought I could move on. I thought I could live without you. But every time I saw you leave, every time I heard about you from Lila, it felt like I was losing you all over again." Elliot's chest tightened at the mention of Lila. It had been years since he left, but even now, the pain of their breakup had never fully faded. He had tried to move on, to forget, but there had always been something that kept pulling him back. It was like a chain he couldn't break. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Madeline," Elliot said, his voice cracking. "I thought leaving would make everything easier. I thought if I just left, everything would be different. But I was wrong." Madeline's eyes softened, the tension in her shoulders easing a little. "I know," she whispered. "I know you were trying to protect me, trying to protect yourself. But it doesn't make it any easier. I spent so many years waiting for you to come back, hoping you would come back." Elliot felt a lump form in his throat. The guilt he had carried for so long surged back, sharper than ever. He had left thinking he was doing the right thing, but now it felt like he had abandoned not just Madeline, but himself as well. "Madeline, he began, but the words didn't come. The emotions tangled up inside him, impossible to untangle. The truth was he had loved her with everything he had. He still did in some way. But things had changed. Life had changed. And now the years of silence seemed like an unbridgeable gap. "I don't know what to say," he finished, his voice quiet. Madeline nodded as if she understood. "I don't know what to say either." The room grew quieter, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped. Elliot felt the weight of his choices, the weight of the past, pressing down on him. It had always been so easy to run from things, to pretend they didn't matter. But now, with Madeline sitting right there, looking at him with those same eyes that had once been full of love, he realized how much he had missed, how much they had both missed. "You should talk to Lila," Madeline said after a long pause. "She's been waiting for you." "She always has." Elliot's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen Lila since the dinner, and now the thought of facing her again made him uneasy. He hadn't expected things to get so complicated. He had always known that Lila cared for him. They both had. But hearing Madeline's words made him realize something he hadn't fully understood before. "You knew, didn't you?" Elliot asked softly. "You knew how she felt." Madeline met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and acceptance. "I knew," she said simply. "But I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know if it was my place." Elliot felt a rush of emotions, confusion, regret, but also something deeper, something he couldn't name. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he asked, almost pleading. "What am I supposed to do with the fact that that I still feel so lost?" Madeline sighed and leaned back in her chair. "You do what feels right, Elliot. You can't keep running from the past. You can't keep pretending like it doesn't matter. It does matter." Elliot nodded slowly, as if trying to understand the weight of her words. He had spent so many years trying to escape the pain, trying to ignore the things that haunted him. But now, in this room with Madeline, it felt like the past was coming back in ways he couldn't control. "Go to her," Madeline said softly. "Talk to Lila. She's not the same person she was before. Neither are you. I think you both deserve a chance." Elliot left Madeline's house feeling more confused than ever. He needed answers, but the answers felt out of reach. The streets of the town, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a maze, a labyrinth of choices and consequences. He found Lila sitting by the water, her gaze lost in the horizon. The waves crashed softly against the shore, the sound almost soothing in the quiet evening. "Lila," Elliot said quietly as he approached her. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Elliot," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't think you'd come." "I had to," he said, his heart pounding. "I've been running from this, from everything for too long." Lila didn't say anything at first, just watched him, waiting. There was so much she wanted to say, but she didn't know where to start. The space between them felt wide, even though it was just a few feet. "I don't know what to do with everything," Elliot admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of years of confusion. "I don't know what to do with these feelings, with you." "With Madeline," Lila smiled softly, though her eyes were filled with sadness. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Elliot. Just..." "Don't run away again!" Elliot stepped closer, his heart thundering in his chest. "I don't want to run. I need to understand." Lila reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Then let's take it one step at a time. We don't have to know everything today. We just have to know that we're here, and that's enough." Elliot stared at their joined hands, feeling something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the same as what he had with Madeline, but it was real. It was new, and maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something he had been running from for far too long. "Okay," he said softly, "one step at a time." Lila smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in a long time. One step at a time. And for the first time in years, Elliot felt like he wasn't running anymore. Maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to face the future, whatever it might hold. Elliot had left the small coastal town years ago, seeking a new life far away from the pain of the past. The town was filled with memories of his first love, Madeline, and the heartbreak they'd both endured. He had thought time would erase it all. But as he walked through the familiar streets, the weight of everything he left behind pressed on him. The salty breeze from the ocean didn't bring the comfort it once had. Instead, it felt like a reminder, a whisper of everything he had lost. The town hadn't changed much. The same old shops lined the cobblestone streets. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the streets, as if the town itself was stuck in a moment that never quite passed. Elliot tried to shake off the feeling of being a stranger in a place that was once home. His footsteps echoed against the buildings, but he couldn't ignore the memories that rushed back with each step. He had returned for a funeral. An old family friend had passed away, and though they hadn't been close in years, it felt like the right thing to do. The truth was, he wasn't ready to face what awaited him here. Not the memories of Madeline, not the unfinished business with her sister, Lila. But he couldn't turn back now. As he approached the church, he saw Lila standing outside, her face turned towards the horizon. She hadn't changed much in the years he'd been away. Still the same quiet, gentle person he remembered. A bit older, a bit more mature, but still carrying that same softness in her eyes. When she saw him, her face froze for a moment before a small, almost sad smile appeared. "Elliot," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of all the unspoken words between them. "Lila," he replied, his voice strained, unsure of what to say. They hadn't spoken since the day he left, and in many ways, she had been a part of the past he'd tried so hard to forget. Lila stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to come," Elliot said, trying to keep his tone light, but it came out heavier than he intended. The silence between them was thick, as if they were both remembering the same things, the time they spent together, the unspoken connection they shared, and the way everything had changed when he left. "You look good," Lila said after a pause, her words quiet but sincere. "Thanks," Elliot replied, feeling the awkwardness between them like a physical weight. "You haven't changed much." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe we don't change as much as we think." Elliot's gaze drifted to the ground, unsure of how to continue the conversation. The last time they had spoken, there had been a distance between them, one created by time and circumstance. But now, Standing in front of her, that distance seemed so much smaller, as if it could be bridged in an instant if only he knew how. "Madeline wanted me to tell you that she's glad you're here," Lila added, breaking the silence. She hasn't been the same since you left." Elliot felt a sharp pang in his chest. Madeline. He had loved her once, deeply, but their love had been complicated, broken by things neither of them had understood at the time. Their breakup had been painful, a tear in the fabric of their relationship that neither had known how to mend. "I should have stayed," Elliot whispered. Almost to himself, though Lila heard him. "You couldn't have stayed," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Sometimes people need to leave to understand themselves better." "Maybe that's what you did." Elliot looked at her, surprised by the understanding in her voice. "I didn't think you'd say that," Lila shrugged. "We all make choices, Elliot, and we live with them." They stood there for a moment, the weight of the past settling between them, both of them lost in thoughts of what had been and what could have been. Finally, Lila spoke again, her voice quiet but certain. "You should come to the dinner tonight. It's for the family. Madeline, well, she's been hoping to see you again." Elliot hesitated. The idea of facing Madeline after all these years filled him with anxiety. There was so much left unsaid between them, so much pain that still lingered. But at the same time, a part of him wanted to see her again, to look into her eyes and understand where they had gone wrong. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Elliot said, his voice hesitant. Lila smiled gently, though it seemed to carry a hint of sadness. "It's not up to me, Elliot." "But Madeline, she's never really let go of you." Elliot nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words sink in. "I don't know if I've let go either." Later that evening, Elliot found himself standing at the door of Madeline's house, his hand raised to knock. He paused, his heart pounding in his chest. Everything about this felt wrong, like stepping back into a world he had already walked away from. When the door opened, Madeline stood there, looking just as he remembered, the same soft brown eyes, the same graceful presence. She had always been beautiful, but now there was something different about her. "Something worn, something faded?" "Elliot," she said quietly, as if saying his name alone carried all the emotions she couldn't express. "Madeline," he replied, his voice almost a whisper. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The house was familiar yet foreign. The walls seemed to whisper of their past, of the love they had shared. But that love felt distant now, like a fading echo of something that once was. As they sat down to dinner, the conversation was polite at first, small talk about the funeral, about the town. But there was an undeniable tension in the air, a heaviness that neither could ignore. Finally, as they finished their meal, the silence became too much to bear. Madeline's voice broke through the stillness, her words hanging in the air. "She never stopped loving you, and neither did I." Elliot froze. The weight of her words hit him like a wave. He looked at her, unsure of how to respond. His heart was racing, his mind in turmoil. Why now? Why was she telling him this after all this time? "Why tell me now?" he asked, his voice quiet but laced with confusion. Madeline met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. "Because I can't pretend anymore, Elliot. Not when I know the truth." Elliot's heart hammered in his chest. His thoughts were spinning. What was the truth? And what did it mean for them? The room felt smaller, the air thicker. There was so much unsaid between them, so many years of silence that could never be erased. As Elliot looked at Madeline, he realized that whatever he had left behind, it was never truly gone. And now, everything was about to change.